The terror of freedom. Why you are paralyzed by the right time. You tell yourself, it's not the right time yet. And you repeat this sentence, this self-justification, like a careful guiding mantra, as if you are being uniquely prudent, strategic, and completely rational. But the truth, the core reality of your paralysis, is much darker, more insidious. You are not truly waiting for the right moment, you are desperately waiting for guarantees. You want to feel ready, to be absolutely, undeniably sure that everything will work out, that there will be no pain, no failure, and certainly no regret. You expect the universe to send you a clear, cosmic, unquestionable sign, as if the brutal responsibility of choosing could somehow be outsourced to a divine or external force. But this eternal waiting is a farce. It is an escape. It is a profound self-deception carefully camouflaged as wisdom. Søren Kierkegaard, the father of existentialism, witnessed this exact human condition long before you were born. He understood that the greatest, most secure prison has no bars. It has justifications. People endlessly claim they are waiting for the ideal moment. But what truly paralyzes them is the terrifying terror of freedom. Because choosing means taking full, undeniable responsibility for your life. It means giving up all other imagined paths. It means accepting that from the moment you decide, there is no one else left to blame. That deep anguish you feel, that tightness in your chest, the restless discomfort, is not a mistake. It is not a weakness. It is a vital symptom that you are alive. Kierkegaard called this existential angst, and he said it arises precisely when we fully realize we are free. Free to act, free to err, free to succeed, and devastatingly, free to fail. Freedom is not lightness. Freedom is a brutal, heavy burden, and that is why so many prefer to remain perpetually trapped in the realm of infinite possibilities, where everything seems possible, as long as nothing is actually done. You fantasize about idealized versions of your life, the perfect career switch, the ideal relationship, the highest version of yourself. You plan meticulously. You say you are. This is the true leap of faith, not a religious one, but an existential one. The radical act of choosing without guarantees, of walking even when you cannot see the ground beneath your feet. And if you do not take this leap, if you remain trapped in the limbo of hesitation, then you are already dead inside. You just forgot to fall. This content reached you for a precise reason. Not as magic, but because deep down, your inner self already knows it's time to act. The restlessness that brought you here is the only sign that matters. The rest is just noise. Now you have two simple choices. Continue deceiving yourself, or finally, wake up. The prison of infinite possibility, the aesthetic life. You believe you are profoundly free because you have a multitude of options. But Kierkegaard shows us a disconcerting truth. This apparent freedom may be precisely the prison that keeps you paralyzed. You feel powerful when you imagine all the lives you could live, the ideal job you haven't applied for, the perfect person you haven't approached, the highest version of yourself you haven't committed to. And while you dream, you feel like you are in motion. But all of this is a debilitating illusion. Nothing is genuinely happening. Outside your head, your life remains suspended, still, caught in an elegant and silent void. This very state, where everything seems possible but nothing is actually realized, is what Kierkegaard called the aesthetic mode of existence. It is the mode of the eternal dreamer, the compulsive planner, the visionary who never commits to action. You say you are waiting for the best moment, the alignment of the stars, the right sign. But what you are really doing is hiding behind possibility. You prefer the comfortable fantasy of choice to the brutal pain of action. Because acting requires cutting, it requires saying no to thousands of other potential paths, and that hurts the ego. The truth is that you have been seduced by the cultural idea of freedom without sacrifice. In a consumer culture that glorifies infinite, non-committal possibilities, endless swiping on dating apps, bookmarking 50 different career paths, renunciation feels like betrayal. Giving something up has become synonymous with failure. So you stay on the edge, collecting plans, feeding expectations, thinking, planning, waiting. You post beautiful, vacuous quotes online about patience and purpose. But deep down, you know you are hiding. Because choosing is terrifying. Choosing ends the fantasy. It turns the dream into something real, imperfect, risky, and flawed. And that is where true, productive suffering begins. The longer you delay, the more the dream decomposes. What once motivated you begins to silently haunt you. You see time passing. You see people around you going, trying, failing, living, and you stay still, waiting. Kierkegaard was relentless about this. For him, those who live eternally in possibility are not dreamers. They are cowards dressed in poetry. And the price of this cowardice is the silent, ongoing deterioration of the soul. The anguish grows, frustration settles in, and regret becomes an inevitable certainty. If you feel a constant restlessness, if a subtle, pervasive anxiety accompanies you every day, that is not a character flaw. That is unlived life. That is accumulated potential, trapped energy, and it will eat away at you, psychologically and physically, until you finally do something decisive with it. But why is it so incredibly hard to act? Why does freedom, which should be a gift, make us psychologically sick? The answer lies at the heart of existential psychology, the very nature of anguish itself. And that is what we will talk about next. Because to understand your paralysis, you need to face head-on the crushing burden of being radically free. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and join this channel. Your support fuels this exploration. The burden of freedom. Anguish as the price of consciousness. Most people genuinely believe they are afraid of failure, but Kierkegaard reveals something much deeper and more disturbing. What truly terrifies us is not failing, it is being free. Freedom, contrary to what cheap motivational discourse tries to sell, is not lightness, it is not joy, and it is certainly not the absence of limits. Freedom is anguish, a specific, deep, and this radical solitude of decision terrifies you, because in choosing, you lose the comfort of being able to assign guilt to others. You lose the alibi, and that is unbearable for many people. The paradox is cruel. You desperately want to be free, but you do not want the heavy weight of freedom. You want the possibilities, but not the responsibility. And that is precisely when anguish arises. This faceless feeling, this tightening in your chest, this pervasive restlessness that you try to medicate, distract, or ignore with endless digital scrolling. But it does not go away, because it is not a mistake. It is the unavoidable price of self-consciousness. Kierkegaard viewed anguish as a breaking point, a threshold between inauthentic existence, where you live as others expect you to, and authentic existence, where you act from yourself, even without guarantees. And here is the crucial key. Anguish should not be avoided but traversed. It is the terrifying, necessary birth pangs of freedom. Without it, you remain a shadow of yourself, a mere reflection of the world, someone who lives by proxy. But traversing anguish requires courage, not the simplistic courage to not feel fear. That is foolishness. But the profound courage to act despite the fear, to take the first decisive step even while trembling. It requires recognizing that the discomfort you feel is not a sign that you are on the wrong path,
but rather that you are finally stepping out of the dead, frozen zone of passivity. And that is the turning point, the ultimate choice. Will you continue trying to anesthetize your freedom with distractions and excuses? Or will you finally accept the heavy, transformative burden it brings? In the next section, we will expose the lie that sustains your paralysis, the endless waiting for guarantees. Because you are not truly waiting for time, money, or clarity. You are waiting for a certainty that will never, ever come. And the more you wait, the more you surrender your life to a highly sophisticated, disguised despair. The lie of guarantees, the search for a safe leap. You tell yourself that you are merely waiting for the right moment, that it's not time to act yet, that you need more clarity, more stability, more definitive signs.
Fear of living. Kierkegaard observed that this waiting is not mere passivity, it is an active decision not to decide. And that is even more dangerous, because it seems sensible. You say you are just being responsible, but what you are doing is fleeing from the deepest responsibility of all, the responsibility to choose without guarantees. The truth is that life will never offer you certainty. You will never have all the information. You will never know with absolute assurance if you are making the right choice, because there is no right choice. There is only the choice you actively make, and the consequences that come with it, glorious or painful. The desire for guarantees is in fact the childish, escapist desire for someone else to make the decision for you, so that you can live without carrying the weight of the outcome. But the adult reality, the reality of authentic existence, is brutal. Every decision is a leap into the dark. No matter how much you plan, calculate, or organize, in the end there will always be risk. There will always be doubt. There will always be a chance of making a mistake. And that is what makes life real. It is what gives value, merit, and courage to action. If there were guarantees, there would be no merit, there would be no courage, there would be no freedom. And here is the cruelest point. The more you wait for guarantees, the further you get from living. Because living, by definition, requires you to expose yourself, to try, to fail, to face the consequences, to rebuild. Waiting for a divine sign is in effect a way of asking God or fate to spare you from the essential pain of being human. But Kierkegaard was clear. This waiting is a refusal to live. It is a suspended, frozen, anesthetized life, an existence without blood, without error, without authenticity. What you are calling patience may be cowardice. What you are calling preparation may be escape. You want a path where there is no loss. But that path does not exist. And the more you insist on searching for it, the more time you waste on the sidelines. So tell me, what hurts more? The transient fear of trying, or the inevitable, permanent regret of never having tried? In the next part, we will explore the only possible response to this reality.
Of faith is one of the most misunderstood concepts in the philosophy of Søren Kierkegaard. Many associate it with a religious leap, a blind surrender to God, a rational renunciation in the name of dogmatic faith. But the leap of faith he proposes is profoundly existential, not theological. It is the absolute, terrifying act of choosing one's own life, even in the face of total, fundamental uncertainty. It is jumping when there is no ground, no safety net, and no guarantees. It is trusting not in an external deity, but in oneself, in one's own capacity for responsibility, in one's own choice, and in one's own courage to exist as an independent entity. Make no mistake, Kierkegaard understood that the modern human is a being in perpetual flight, flight from silence, from pain, from responsibility, and above all, from one's own freedom. But there comes a moment when the pain of continuing to flee becomes greater than the fear of facing the music, and that is where the leap is born. Not as an impulsive act, but as an act of brutal, sober lucidity. The leap of faith is the conscious, difficult decision to live authentically, even knowing that you might fail spectacularly. It is the final abandonment of the search for absolute certainties and the active beginning of the real creation of one's own existence. This leap does not happen with epic music in the background, nor with a divine revelation illuminating the path. It is silent, solitary, made in the dark of dawn, when you are face to face with the emptiness of your own soul. It happens when you realize that if you do not act now, you will continue spinning endlessly in the same debilitating cycle of anguish, dissatisfaction, and eternal waiting. Kierkegaard knew that those who leap are not those who feel less fear. They are those who accept fear as an inherent part of the journey. They are those who understand that living is a risk that will never be eliminated. They are those who realize that the only possible certainty is this: if I do nothing, nothing will change. The leap is the mature response to anguish. It is the moment when you look into the abyss and say, I choose, even if I do not know what will happen. And do not be fooled. Those who leap also
You choose to remain stationary, waiting for certainties that never come. Kierkegaard also gives us that answer, and it is harsh, because it reveals what many live without realizing: a death disguised as life. In the next part, we will face this uncomfortable truth head-on, because continuing to postpone action does not keep you safe. It condemns you to a profound, sterile emptiness. And this emptiness has a name: despair. The silent despair, death in life. Few things are as cruel as a life that is never truly lived, not because opportunities were lacking, but because fear always spoke louder and more persuasively. Kierkegaard was not afraid to name this state, despair, and not the dramatic despair with tears and screams, but a more insidious, dangerous despair, the silent one, the one that hides beneath routines, empty goals, and elaborate justifications. It is the despair of those who still breathe, but have long since stopped truly living. When you refuse to choose, you are not remaining neutral. You are choosing not to live. You are opting for an existence without depth, without risk, without authenticity. With each day you postpone action, decision, the leap. You are burying yourself a little deeper in the grave of inertia. And the worst part is, you are convinced that you are being sensible. Kierkegaard saw this with terrifying clarity. For him, the greatest danger in life was not error, failure, or even pain. It was stagnation, the freezing of the soul. Living trapped in what he called infinite possibility, where everything can be done but nothing is done, is to live in a kind of existential purgatory, neither heaven nor hell, neither joy nor true pain, just a continuous low-grade numbness where the only thing that grows is regret. And this regret, contrary to what you think, does not wait for the end of life. It is already there, in the irritation you feel when you see others trying, in the frustration that appears every time a new week begins and everything remains exactly the same, in the silent shame of knowing that you could be somewhere else, mentally, emotionally, or physically, but chose the safety of stagnation. Time does not stop, and the time you waste.
Boredom ceases to be simply uncomfortable and becomes utterly unbearable. When you realize that there is nothing more dangerous than staying in the same place for too long, and perhaps that moment is now. In this final section, we confront this truth with the urgency it deserves, because if you are still waiting for a sign, this is the sign. Not one coming from the sky, but the one that screams inside you. The restlessness, the discomfort, the silent anger of being stuck. It is time to do something about it, to act, to live, because time is passing, and so are you. If you are still here, reading or listening to these words, it's because something inside you already knows. Something in you is tired, not of the world but of yourself, tired of hiding behind caution, behind endless preparation, behind the illusion that tomorrow you will magically be more ready.
You won't. Tomorrow you will be older, with more doubts, more hesitations, and more scars accumulated from everything you didn't have the courage to try. And you know what's worse? Even if you try to ignore this restlessness, it will not go away. It will grow. It will wake you up in the middle of the night. It will make you feel out of place, frustrated and empty, even when everything external around you seems okay. Because you weren't born to live a lukewarm life, and you know that truth deep in your bones. Kierkegaard said that the door to happiness opens inward. This means it's pointless to wait for the world to change, for conditions to improve, or for someone to come and rescue you. The movement has to start within you. You are the door, and you are locking yourself in. So now you have two urgent choices before you. Keep waiting for a sign that will never come, or recognize that this moment is the sign, that this restlessness pulsing inside you, this tension growing by the minute, is the only warning that matters. You don't need another video, another book, another opinion. What you need is an act, a step, a gesture, a decisive break from everything that keeps you frozen. Yes, it will hurt. Yes, you might fail. But what you are living now, this paralysis that consumes you in silence, is already a form of pain. A pain without transformation, a
living in wait mode. And if this video touched you, shook you, and made you face truths you've been avoiding, then subscribe. Not just to support the channel, but to constantly remind yourself to keep waking up, to keep coming out of the anesthesia. This is a space for those who have the courage to look within and act. The time is now, and there is nothing more to wait for.